At some point in the book, you were talking about copyist insertions, and this is another
Yeah.
popular thing hurled against the Bible, the New Testament. Is
Yep.
well, just to play the devil's advocate role. Don't you know that the Bible is a book that has been edited over centuries, and all these different things are added and taken away from it? So, what is a copyist insertion? Are there any in the New Testament, and how does this affect reliability?
Yeah, I think the best person to kind of most articulately makes this objection is probably Bart Ehrman, who,
Yeah.
and Jesus Interrupted, basically said this is one of the things that he decided Christianity wasn't true on the basis of discovering, number one, we don't have the originals. We don't. If I make a claim about the Constitution and you doubt me, you can go back to the archives, National Archives, that big building on the corner in Washington D.C., and you can go down in there and take a look at the actual U.S. Constitution, all of our founding documents. We have the originals, and you can see them for yourself to see if it really says what I'm saying it says. But we don't. Bart discovered at Moody Bible Institute that we don't have any originals when it comes to the autographs, the original manuscripts of the New Testament. Not a single New Testament document do we have an original. And not only that, we don't have the first copy of the original or the copy of the copy of the copy of the first
Right.
copy
This
of
is
the
probably one
original.
of the things that made me doubt as well whenever I was in seminary too. But sorry,
Yeah,
yeah,
right?
sorry to interrupt,
Can
but
you,
yeah.
exactly. Can you see that? You know, let me just see this real quick. I think I can share a screen with you, Hayden.
Okay.
Can we do that on the show?
Yeah, that's fine with me if it'll work. Yeah, go for it.
I think it will. So what I'm just going to talk to you about. So that was his claim. I'm going to open this while I'm talking to him. I'm going
By
to
all
open up my
means.
computers
Yeah.
here and open this. So his claim basically was that, yeah, we don't have an original. We don't even have early copies. And then when we finally get a copy, it's pretty old. I mean, it's maybe in the second, third, fourth century.
Right.
And then when we look at the most ancient copies, let's say we have 3 or 4 copies of a particular manuscript, and they're all, he would say 4th century copies, so they're pretty old. And he says, then when you take a look at those and you compare them to each other, they aren't exactly the same. They have small one-word differences here or there, that for him was way too much. I mean, that was enough for him to say, look, he finds then, he says this in his book, that there are so many thousands of 1 or 2 word variations between the oldest manuscripts that he says there are more variations between these manuscripts than there are words in the New Testament. That's how he puts it in the book.
Hmm.
And I think if you look at that, you would say, yeah, that's pretty dramatic. And that's something that would, I think almost anyone who's reasonable about this would say, yeah, that makes me worry.
Right.
That I can't accept that. And that's really where he was. Now, what I'm going to try to do is open up why I think this doesn't really work. And I do this kinds of presentations in front of groups. I try to show them. Now, he will admit this. He will say this. The vast majority, 99.9% of these, are 1 or 2 word variations in which no meaning is challenged. So he would say the identity of Jesus is not under challenge. Nothing about any of these variations. It's not as though one side says, oh, Jesus is not divine, didn't rise from the dead, and the other copy says it does.
Right.
These are small, mostly grammatical differences between. So what I want to do is just show you a couple. And let me just open this. I know, right? So I apologize to all of you who were hoping to see this, but I'll just explain it to you. So he'll talk about how it's instead of saying my will or God's will, it might say his will,
Right.
when it's referring to God all along. A lot of these are small one-word changes. Okay, so let's just make that clear. But what and Bart is correctly showing his audience how to identify the variations between manuscripts, but he's not sharing with his audience why translators decide on which one of those words
Right.
to put in their translation. And how I typically illustrate it is this: if I was to text my son a message, and it's a message about I'm going to bring him some money to help him through college. I'll bring him $5,000 for the rest of the semester. He's at USC. My other son's a doctor, so when he was in med school, and I'm going to bring it to you at 5 o'clock on Wednesday. I'll meet you at Starbucks on Main Street, and I will bring you $5,000. But let's say that first text to him, I typo it, and the 5 is a percentage sign, so you cannot tell how much money it is.
Mm-hmm.
And And so I text him a second time. Only now I've misspelled Starbucks and the autocorrect has called it starving. And so he's like, now that's incorrect. And I'm a perfectionist, so I do it a third time. And the third time it says, instead of Main Street, it says Main Streak. The fourth time I text it, I've now got, instead of sending the money you need, I actually, it autocorrects and it says nerd. I send him 5 different texts, none of which are correct.
Right.
But he knows already what I am going to do. He can tell me, he knows, stop. I'm going to meet you on Wednesday at 5 o'clock on Starbucks on Main Street for $5,000. How does he know that when he doesn't even have a single inerrant text? As a matter of fact, if I texted him 100 more times and each time I still have an error in 100 more texts, well, now it could properly be said that I've got more errors, more variance between the text than I have letters in the text.
But you also have more,
Yes, but he knows what my intent was. He knows what the original message was, even though it's been typoed. And how he knows is because copies and numbers of copies matter more than numbers of variants.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is not so as the variants increase, but so also do the number of copies you have to compare.
Right.
So it's kind of,
right.
I mean, he's right in saying that the variance.
This is how we do this. This is how we remove the variance to get back to what we believe is a reliable copy of the autograph. And so I think for us, it's about making sure when we say inerrancy, we talk about inerrancy, what we're talking about, look, clearly we don't have the autographs.
Right.
And the copies we have don't match. And although none of these differences have any impact on content, and have any impact on the deity of Christ or any of the orthodox claims of Christianity, they don't match. So we have to say, well, what do you mean by inerrancy then? Well, what I mean by inerrancy is that we have a process in place that allows us to get back reliably to the inerrant original, which we don't have access to. And that's typically how I will say it if we're talking about inerrancy.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense.
Thanks so much for watching our video. If it was helpful and useful to you, I'd really appreciate it if you would follow us, subscribe to our channel at the bottom link here in the video, and tell your friends. And please follow us on social media.